Welcome all grade 11 students to the ScienceNest YouTube channel. Today we are going to learn about animal tissues. There are 4 types of animal tissues: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue and nervous tissue. From here we are going to learn about these 4 types of animal tissues. Epithelial tissue. This is the tissue that lines up the free surfaces, that means internal surfaces or the external surfaces of the vertebrate body. Some of them are composed of single layers of cells and others are with several cell layers. Let's learn the features of epithelial tissue. In this picture you can observe the epithelial tissue. The cells are placed on a basement membrane. You can see a basement membrane in this picture. The cells are tightly packed and a nervous supply is present within the tissue, but there is no any blood supply for this epithelial tissue. Now we will observe the places where the epithelial tissue can be observed. Wall of blood capillaries. In this picture you can observe a blood capillary. The inner layers of the blood capillaries you can observe this epithelial tissue. And also thyroid gland also composed with epithelial tissue. Lining of the nasal cavity is also composed with epithelial tissue. And also wall of urinary bladder is also composed with epithelial tissue. Next place is the epidermis of the skin. In this picture you can see the outermost layer of the skin is the epidermis. It has composed with this epithelial tissue. Let's learn the functions of epithelial tissue. Lining up of free surfaces and protection. It protects the internal organs from pressure, friction and microbes. Absorptive function. The epithelium of digestive tract absorbs digestive end products. Perception of stimuli. The epithelium of tongue and nose detect taste and smell senses. Secretory function. Secretion of mucus by the lining epithelium of respiratory tract. Next one, filtering. Epithelium of Bowman's capsule in nephrons filters blood. Next tissue type is connective tissue. The connective tissue provides connection between tissues and organs and provides support too. These are the types of connective tissues: blood tissue, bone tissue, cartilage and connective tissue under skin. Connective tissue is composed with different types of cells and also fibers. These cells and fibers are embedded in a large matrix. Most connective tissues possess nerve and blood supply. Blood tissue is a special type of connective tissue. The specialty is the matrix, that means the plasma. Plasma is a special word used for the matrix in this blood tissue. It is not secreted by blood cells like in other connective tissues. Blood tissue helps in maintaining proper connection between organs and tissue of the human body. Let's see what are the features of blood tissue. Blood is composed of a blood matrix called plasma and there are cells. The matrix contains cells called red blood cells, erythrocytes, and white blood cells, which means leukocytes, and cellular pigments called platelets. Fibers are not found always, but during blood clotting process, the fibers are appearing. Let's see the functions of the blood tissue. Transportation of materials. Respiratory gases, nutrients, excretory materials and hormones are transported to the relevant organs by the blood tissue. Protection. White blood cells destroy foreign bodies, that means microorganisms, by phagocytosis and by producing antibodies. In the phagocytosis process, the white blood cells are swelling the pathogenic microorganisms. Next animal tissue type is muscle tissue. Muscle tissue is made up of muscle cells or muscle fibers. These muscle fibers possess contraction and relaxation ability. They possess a good blood supply. Therefore, muscle tissue receives oxygen and nutrients at a high rate. Muscle tissue acts as one of the effectors in responding in coordination. Effectors of the body are muscles and bones. There are three types of muscle tissues: smooth muscle tissue, skeletal muscle tissue, and cardiac muscle tissue. First of all, we are going to learn about the smooth muscle tissue. In this picture, you can observe the smooth muscle tissue. First of all, we will see what are the examples for smooth muscle tissues. Wall of digestive tract. It has composed with smooth muscle tissue. And uterus also composed with smooth muscle tissue. Other examples are blood vessels and the bladder. Next muscle tissue type is skeletal muscle tissue. In this picture, you can observe the skeletal muscle. Examples: bicep muscle and tricep muscle of the hand, and muscles in leg. Facial muscles are examples for skeletal muscle tissue. Next muscle tissue type, cardiac muscle tissue. In this picture, you can observe the cardiac muscle tissue. It is exclusively found in the vertebrate heart. Let's see the differences between smooth muscle tissue, skeletal muscle tissue, and cardiac muscle tissue. The cells in the smooth muscle tissues are unbranched and spindle-shaped cells. In the cells in the skeletal muscle tissue, they are long, cylindrical, unbranched cells. The cardiac muscle cells are short, cylindrical, branched cells. Cells in the smooth muscle cells have no nucleus. Cells in the skeletal muscle tissue have more nucleus. That is why we call them as multinucleate cells. Cells in the cardiac muscle tissue have got one nucleus. That is why we call them as uninucleate cells. Cells in the smooth muscle tissue have no striations. Cells in the skeletal muscle tissue have striations, and also in the cardiac muscle cells have striations. Smooth muscle cells do not become fatigued easily, but skeletal muscle cells become fatigued easily. Cardiac muscle cells never become fatigued. Smooth muscle tissue cells can control involuntary, that means they can work automatically, but skeletal muscle tissue have to control voluntary, that means we have to control skeletal muscle tissue. And also the cardiac muscle tissue is controlled involuntary, that means automatically. Smooth muscle tissue and the skeletal muscle tissues are unbranched, so there are no intercalated discs among the cells. But in the cardiac muscle tissue cells, among the tissue cells, there are intercalated discs. Skeletal muscle tissue have got many mitochondria in the cells. Next animal tissue type, nervous tissue. The structural unit of nervous tissue is nerve cell, or we call it as neuron. Neurons are specialized to transmit impulses. Features of neuron. Neuron is composed of two parts. The two parts are cell body and nerve fibers. Nucleus, mitochondria, Golgi body and endoplasmic reticulum are found in the cell body. Axon arises from the cell body as a single process. The axon transmits impulses away from the cell body. Dendrons branch out to form dendrites. Dendrites receive stimuli and transmit impulses to the cell body. Most of the axons in chordates are myelinated. That means these axons have got myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is not continuous, and the interrupted places are known as knots of Ranvier. Interrupted places are the places the myelin sheath has not composed. The myelin sheath increases the speed of transmission of impulses. That is the function of myelin sheath. In this picture you can observe the myelinated axons are transmitting impulses rapidly than the other nerves. There are very special functions of neurons. It receives information from receptors like eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin or another neuron and transmit impulses to the receptor, that means muscle, or to another neuron. According to the function, there are three types of neurons. One is sensory neuron, motor neuron and the interneuron. This is the end of our first lesson. Thank you for watching. Subscribe the channel and click the bell icon to watch more videos related to you.